All right, guys, good morning. We're going to get this thing kicked off, and hopefully, we'll get it done in much less than an hour. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about, just big changes that are happening. And, as everybody's probably reading about the cloud industry and, everything's kind of moving from CapEx to OpX and, new ways of spending, new ways of purchasing, I guess you would say product, and including in that some new ways of even purchasing services. We wanted to get real specific with our audience and talk about specific changes to the areas of, Microsoft licensing, automation in the industry, what's happening where we as the consumer who are buying, whatever it might be, desktop or, cloud-based licensing, the ways that we can go in there and essentially, buy it on a pay-as-you-go basis, pay for it as you use it, in an OpEx type spend. So it's a big topic. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in what's going on out there. And so we're going to try to do, add some clarification today. So anyway, the title of this, of course, is A Great CapEx Exodus and, why technology today belongs in OpEx. And there's a real compelling story to it. And, frankly, as a business owner, I think there's this tipping point that's finally here where, this OpEx makes a lot of sense for organizations. So we'll talk through that. A little bit of, who are we? So this is our crazy group that's based, some of it in San Diego. But, yeah, Managed Solution, I founded the company many years ago. I guess seems like many years ago. But anyway, founded Managed Solution back when. I'm Sean. I'm the guy there way on the left in the medium-sized shirt for some reason. But anyway, so Managed Solution 2003, we're a nationally recognized service provider, meaning, we do a lot of services-based work all over the world. And, from global 100s and, Fortune 10s down to 50 user customers. So it's a lot of fun for us. We're what's considered a Tier 1 cloud solution provider, and I'll explain more about that, and I won't bore you with it, but it's just, we do focus on cloud infrastructure, technology, identity management, all that good stuff. The offices, we're headquartered in sunny San Diego, and we love the other places around us in the Southwest, so we're there all the way out into the, kind of the Midwest, Denver area. And then, to give you an idea, we maintain about 100,000 assets for companies and, sort of through our managed services and our blended IT, all the way up through having over 1,500 customers worldwide. And then, yeah, we, in the world of cloud, if you could think public cloud like the Azures of the world, the Amazon Web Services, Google, things like that, we sit in the top 1% of delivery partners, Office 365 on the globe. So with that said, here's kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about in the Microsoft world, the enterprise agreement, the EA of today, and what's coming down the pipe with what's called MPSA, and what's available here today. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the new world of what's called cloud solution providers and the different tiers and what that means to you guys as the customer and the benefit, both from a cost perspective and I would say support perspective. And I guess, the big thing is that for years, I've seen our customers feel like licensing and, this capital expenditure is just a mystery. Every couple of years, something comes up for renewal. They start spending months at a time with spreadsheets and, spending money on outside organizations to come in and try to help them figure out what to buy and what they need to, what they call true up or, purchase that they had used in the previous year. And, psychologically that played a toll on them, and it actually, made it so some people didn't do any deployment of technologies they wanted to bring out. So we'll get down the road as we talk through this webinar about how we now have the control as consumers to be able to go out and purchase licensing when we want it and pull it away when we don't use it. So a true, pay-per-view model, if you will, for like the television guys out there. So we're going to talk about the enterprise agreement changes. We're going to talk a little bit about what just recently happened with Microsoft and what they call the red carpet rollout, or one of their many terms, and why they've sort of moved away from some account managers working directly with customers. We'll talk, price comparisons, what that means. I can do some explanation for you there, and there's further detail down the road if you guys want to talk to us offline. Why the rapidly changing technology should be considered for OpEx, and that's kind of that CEO. They're hounding our CIOs of today and saying, hey, I want to look at other options. So, I have so many friends who are CIOs and IT managers around the world, and what they ask me is, what do I start doing next? How do I figure out my next career path as the technology evangelist? And I advise them it's all about financially and being fiscally minded as well as operationally, good at what you do. So CS, CTOs, CFOs, yeah, it's coming together. To some extent, like I say, being fiscally minded is important, and there's going to be a lot of interaction with the CFO as they get these big bills in the mail, and you guys are going to have to figure out how to explain, where you're spending your money with them not knowing. Service features, options, things like that can be purchased on demand. The most cost-effective way to manage this self-serve technology licensing, automation will show it. I think things are becoming more automated, whether it be cost management, migrations, things like that. How you can do it, the pay-for-as-you-go options, and then, how do you get funding? There's a lot of money in the world of funding right now through the big providers and publishers like Microsoft, and we'll explain that. So, yeah, there's this great book, if anybody's ever read it, called Consumption Economics, and it talks about the consumption gap, and it talks about, back when we had to buy we'll say a CRM system or a Salesforce automation system, we used to have to CapX that bad boy, and all the features would keep creeping up on us, plus we'd have that original CapEx expenditure, but by the time our users adopted it, it was just, we had spent a ton of money getting it implemented, getting all the features out, and we couldn't even keep up with all the features, so there was just high CapEx costs up front. In today's world with products like Office 365 and other Microsoft Cloud strategies and outside of Microsoft Cloud strategies, Amazon and Google and all these guys, they're really converting to the CapEx cost. And, they're just making it so you avoid things like that upfront intensive capital cost for like hardware. Like I say, we still do, and we used to pay for hardware or software in a 3-year commitment, and we still do to some extent today, but that's changing. We used to pay big money for phone systems up front. Nowadays, we can actually get stuff on the fly as we need it. So it's a change in the marketplace. And the only advice, and again, for what it's worth, I'm the subject matter opinion expert. I'm not, going to tell you this is all fact. But the only thing I would say is too many CEOs like myself get on planes and we read and we talk to our partners out there and we talk to advisors, and they tell us, look at the new models of cloud, public cloud, on-premise, look at how the licensing plays into that. And so that's things that you guys should be thinking about if you aren't already. So we talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago, but yeah, CFOs and CTOs, they're coming together. I can't tell you how many times we get to walk into meetings and in enterprise customers and the CFOs in the room talking about, I know my CTO or CIO has came up with this strategy from a technology perspective that's going to make us more innovative, but at the same time, I'm going to have to understand the cost model. Let's say we're building a software product and we need a place to build it on. So we might use a Microsoft Azure, but that means that there's going to be a CapEx expense that we have to sort of digest as CFOs. So having that interaction between the two is becoming, more and more commonplace these days. And again, you can kind of see over here on the right of the slide, it talks a little bit about, the first thing we want to see from the CTO, CIO of today is innovation. The CEOs, the CFOs, the C-level players in organizations are looking to the CTOs these days for innovation, I would say automation, workflow, business process. They want the CTO out there talking to whether it be the sales department or the marketing department or the HR department about how do we truly automate from when we hire to when we unfortunately fire or release people, the whole process that is handled on the back end from IT. How do we automate billing? How do we automate Salesforce management and marketing automation? All that stuff is stuff that they want the CTOs of today thinking about. And for any CTO on the phone, by the way, or IT manager, it's funny, I have this wholehearted belief that with CRM systems that can now be bought in the cloud, you're going to see more marketing being built inside of those, and frankly, you guys will be working a lot more intently with the marketing people too. So line of business manager, I would get more and more used to it. Risk management, again, something to be thought about, with these two parties that work together more. A lot of collaboration across cost models, predictors, things like that. And then, of course, just knowledge, building the tech-savvy finance people and keeping them in the loop as to what's going on. So the next one we want to talk about is the enterprise agreement, and that's been commonplace in the Microsoft space for, 15, 20 years. So for anybody on the phone who owns an enterprise agreement or is looking at options, the enterprise agreement has traditionally been agreements that are a 3-year term, and they are something that really at the beginning of the Microsoft world, before there was really other competitors out there, people found it much easier to go in and buy a 3-year commitment type licensing deal with Microsoft with one licensing SKU for a certain segment of the business, whether it be the Windows Server or the Windows Desktop or the Office Suite, or they could even bundle up, different suites of things like, their Office Suite, their Windows Server, and their Windows operating system into one, what we used to call or still call CoreCal. So with that said, people were doing it. It was a much simpler method of trying to understand, what you were going to need over the next 3 years. But people and other, technology providers started coming in, the Googles, the VMwares, the Amazons, and people have started to sort of want to unwind and try to figure out, I need what I need on a monthly basis, and I don't know what I don't need right now, so do I have to commit to potentially Microsoft or some other party out there for 3 years? So there's a lot of questions around EAs and what's going to happen in the future, and we'll define that and tell you what we're hearing and what's happening even today. So, advantages of the EA, though, we talk about the significant discounts, depending on the size of the company. If there's no real secret out there other than to be said that, in the Microsoft space, there's 4 levels of discount, A, B, C, D, and it all depends on how big you are. Traditionally, if you were 250 seats, you'd kind of be priced at what's called level A, and if you got into that, give or take 10,000 seats or more, you would get all the way down to that level D. The challenge, as everybody would tell you, is you could always scale up. There was no question about buying more licensing from anybody because that always makes sense for the publishers of the world. But scaling back was tough. And then really understanding throughout the year what you bought, and then having to true up at the end of the year, for those of you who are familiar, that was always a scary time. And then, of course, with that, we've always had and probably always will have some form of software assurance, whether that's technical support or benefits that come as part of these agreements, whatever they may be. But software assurance, the next upgrade of whatever the version is, those things are going to happen. And in the cloud, frankly, whatever agreement you buy, you're technically paying for it OpX, and you should get your next level of whatever that, Windows 25, I don't know what it'll be in about 10 years. But anyway, you'll be able to get that in the future. So we'll keep going on that. Enterprise agreement changes. So we're so familiar with the idea of the EA that Microsoft, they started to talk last year, and it's probably been about 2 years ago, about new agreements, one called Microsoft Products and Services Agreement, MPSA. And then they also started, or just recently announced, what's going to be called the Enterprise Advantage Agreement from Microsoft. So this is where we get confused on the phone, and you guys start asking a lot of questions, and please do. The Enterprise Advantage is going to be something that's similar to the EA with some commitment level for customers who have 500 seats or less. So it's going to have the traditional bundles you've seen before. It's going to have the similar, the very few sets of license keys, and hopefully to some extent give customers a simpler way of buying licenses, different from the Enterprise Agreement of old, but similar in some ways. And we're going to hear more about that in FY17 or first quarter of next year from Microsoft. But if you guys do have an enterprise agreement today, one thing you may have heard or had an email about recently, or may have even witnessed some phone calls, is that Microsoft reps who manage small and mid-sized accounts over the last 6 months have been really refocused onto just a subset of those accounts. So of the, say, 100% of accounts they had, they're down to a finite 10%. And the other 90% have actually went out into the field, and Microsoft's asking partners in this world, whether that be a managed solution or any of our competitors out there, to help customers manage and really consume and deploy licensing and or workloads that they feel fit for their environment under Microsoft. So you may have got a call from an inside rep at Microsoft or your old outside rep, but that's just normal, and know that there's companies like us that they've asked to go out there and really help enable the client and take advantage of funding that they give us and other expertise that we have on staff to truly implement great solutions for you guys. We are going to see, back in the EA days, and they're still here, you have to log into a Microsoft portal. It can be kind of a pain in the butt, but you log into a Microsoft portal, you can kind of view your EA and what you own in terms of your software assurance. But I still think that I found a lot of customers who had a lot of concerns around that. I don't understand it, what I have, what I don't have. I do have my cadence with my rep. But with this new level of licensing we're going to talk about here, we're going to see automation portals come up where you're going to be able to go into a portal and see your licensing, see the details, and then more so be able to make decisions on the fly, whether it's I need a couple more licenses today or I need a couple less tomorrow, literally on the fly, prorated. I mean, getting stuff mid-month if you needed it to use for a temporary period of time. So I think psychologically this is going to be a great, great thing for the consumer out there who's buying Microsoft cloud and on-premise licensing, and I hope it's a game changer for everybody involved, including the Microsoft. But again, a lot of the onus is going to be on them. So let's talk a little about what they call MPSA, or Microsoft Products and Services Agreement. So the difference in MPSA, and it can be bought through your traditional what they call LAR or LSP, is that it's less of a commitment than the EA. It traditionally goes in 12, 24, or 36-month agreements, and it does give you some flexibility to be able to scale up or scale down depending on obviously what your business is going through from a licensing perspective. You're probably at this point in time not hearing a lot about MPSA, but I will give you this. Microsoft, as they make their transition or transformation, as they would call it, from a licensing perspective, will one day here lead with what's called Microsoft Products and Services Agreements and what's called Cloud Solution Provider and CSP, which we're going to talk about in this. But again, looking at MPSA, it's something that if your EA today is coming up for renewal, you can absolutely go in and convert to this. And there's, much like you've seen in the EA, all the different licensing types from Windows Server to SQL all the way down through, Skype and SharePoint. So very new model that they have been really pushing, and you're going to probably see more of that here in the next couple of years. But absolutely, if you have questions, by all means, I'll be happy to answer them today. So some of the benefits of MPSA, you can, like we talked about before, be flexible in these 1, 2-year, and 3-year durations. With cloud products, what we found is that Microsoft has a whole slew of in the world of Office 365, the E1s, the E5s, the E3s, and they change, and they're going to change. They're going to add more great technology to their stack. But in that, with these MPSA agreements, you are given not only the chance to sign up for a commitment of, say, 12 months, but you're also able to do short-term subscriptions for certain licensing needs. So if you decided you needed Skype for Business on what's called the Microsoft E5 SKU for a remote office and you needed to use it for a few months, there's flexibility in MPSA to allow you to do that. Not as much as we'll talk about in what's going to be called CSP, and definitely much more than what was once an EA, but these are a more flexible agreement type with that software assurance that you're used to. So again, if it's of interest to you, grab your LSP and quiz them on what it looks like in MPSA. Cloud Solution Provider, what is it? And if you haven't heard about it, you're probably going to through a lot of your trusted partners out there. Cloud Solution Provider was announced about now going on 2 years ago at Microsoft. And I'll kind of give you what I think is the real secret behind what it was. Microsoft felt that, finally in the marketplace there was a lot of competitive brands out there, whether it be Cisco from a voice perspective, or even, or other, security perspective, or a VMware or a Google or an Amazon. They have competition that they didn't have 10 years ago. So what they were finding was that a lot of customers had in their former EA agreements all of the licensing, whether that was back in the day it used to be called OCS or Lync or SharePoint, or they had Hyper-V, but they weren't necessarily using it. And then every 3 years would go along, and then renewal would come up, and all of a sudden you as the consumer would say, you know what, I don't need Hyper-V anymore, or I don't need OCS or Lync in the the Plus Cal or the eCal, so you guys would get rid of it. And of course, that doesn't play well for anybody. So what Microsoft said is, if we're going to go out there and really, do a good job in the field, what we need to do is put the power in the hands of our true integrators and allow them to not only help with reselling of the licensing, but to help with deployment. And Microsoft would back that by giving us the ability to not only sell you the licensing on a pay-as-you-go model, but also be able to, give us money potentially to help you guys with deployment of services. We just had a question. So can you tell us about ways that clients can purchase OpX products and service, i.e. Azure, through an MS partner without having a front-loaded cost model for licensing? Okay, that's an awesome question, Mr. Fitzgerald. Yes, so what's funny about cloud, and when we talk about it, all you read about is how cloud is pay for use, pay for the drink, pay as you go. And the funny thing that we've seen in the world of, let me say this, I do love Microsoft and their technology, but what we found was that even though there was these cloud-based products like Microsoft Azure, you still had to commit to a certain amount on your, on your enterprise agreement, to actually be able to use Azure. And this started about, 2.5 years ago. And at one point in time, for a lot of you guys on the phone, the minimum commitment was about $24,000, $25,000 a year. Well, I can tell you a lot has changed. Is in their competitive landscape, I won't go into names, but the companies who did it a different way kind of believed in the dip your toe in the water methodology. So I can tell you today that through these provider programs like CSP and even MPSA, you can do a minimum monthly commitment on one VM in these in the Microsoft Azure stack and use it as you go, and really leverage it for workloads like maybe test dev or a certain application you want to run in production, but you only pay for it when you use it. So that's an awesome thing they finally did that I think is a game changer for Microsoft Azure. So CSP, I won't belabor this screen because I got a few more on it, but yeah, it's definitely a cloud solution provider is what you're going to hear about. You're going to hear about Tier 1 and Tier 2 models. But again, if you're partnering with a systems integration or partner firm, a VAR today, there's about 3,500 of them in the world, and with those, they may be coming at you with, here's a new model and a way to license your technology through Microsoft. So I would investigate it. It's an amazing program. The discounts are there, so something to think about. So some of the benefits, what is the difference in EA, MPSA, and all that stuff, and we'll get deeper into that as we go through this presentation. But yeah, I mean, the big one, without a doubt, is save money and only pay for what you use. No true-ups. I mean, true-ups were the scariest thing, and like I've told my friends at Microsoft before, I feel like customers are handcuffed or hand-tied at times where they don't do anything with deployment because they get worried that if I do it, am I going to have this major true-up at the end of something? And the reality is, with this new cloud solution provider program, no. You pay for it when you use it, and if you decided it wasn't a fit for you, whether that's Microsoft CRM or Dynamics platforms or SharePoint, whatever it is, you can turn it off. And it's also really unbundled. What I mean by that is where you're used to paying for large things like the core or eCal, you can buy any and every product that you could imagine through Microsoft at a very, a one-off fee. So whether that's just looking into things like their SSO tool through Azure Active Directory or rights management or just OneDrive for business or personal, you can do all of that through these programs. And that also includes whether you're government, education, or even commercial. All of this can be provided through CSP. Traditional, discounts are about 20% off of what you would see if you went out to retail, and sometimes that's give or take more or less depending on the size. But you're going to find that the same benefits that you get through EA and MPSA would be available through CSP, including discounts. So again, just talking to your partner, they can kind of run through that with you. Enterprise agreement, enterprise support, can you do it? Yes. People ask us this all the time, how do I get support? So one of the things that Microsoft felt was that, yes, they've always been accessible in some way or another, and sometimes you paid for large agreements to have premier deployment or support services and or Microsoft consulting services. But in reality, nowadays what they're asking is that companies like the Managed Solutions of the world who provide these US-based help desks can go out and be your Tier 1 support as a CSP partner. So they're all there. They're very inexpensive to use, and they have direct access, like Managed Solution does, to the Microsoft teams that we need to, I guess, get information from. Incentives. Microsoft absolutely is pushing for products like Azure and Office 365, and they're what's now being called Enterprise Management Suite, formerly EMS, and there are incentives. And even Windows 10, by the way, there are incentives for deploying that we can take advantage of, as can your other partners out there, to deploy some of these technologies. And then the coolest part for us has really been the change to allowing the consumer themselves, the CIO of today, to have automated portals to go out there and help with purchasing and procurement and cost management of both software licensing on-premise and even their Azure licensing and or Azure spend that happens in the cloud, which again, at an OpEx type player and a utility type play can become very complex. And we talk about that CTO, CFO role. It's very challenging when the CFO gets a big bill in the mail and they don't know what to do with it. So having portals like this to automate that and help you with cloud cost management across your organization is something that people are really going to grasp onto. MPSA versus CSP. It's like I said before, it can be recommended for anybody: commercial, government, healthcare, academic organizations. There is a lot of you who may or may not be. We work with a lot of California state universities and higher ed, and then obviously K through 12 throughout the U.S. A lot of the Microsoft stuff, and good for Microsoft, is actually very inexpensive if you're in academia. So it's a great thing. But again, we talked a little bit about in the MPSA, you do have those 1, 2, and 3 year sort of commits up front where you can go in there and say, I'll sign a 12-month agreement and I can ratchet up and ratchet down a little bit your licensing, but you are kind of committed to a SKU. So for anybody, for example, who's on Office 365 out there and they have E3, if they really wanted to, drive back and get an E1 SKU because they just weren't taking advantage of all the features of E3, that they wouldn't be allowed to do. But beyond that, it's a much more flexible model than EA, which is a good thing because, like I say, EA is phasing out, this is coming in, and they're becoming more flexible. You can get price protection, which is always an important thing. One thing about CSP that, I think I'll be the first to tell you, the CEO I always worry about is can we always maintain the great pricing we're getting from Microsoft and be able to pass it through to you guys as customers. So I just want to make sure that's always there. And there are ways on CSP where we as a company, like a managed solution, can commit to Microsoft for a period of time. But like I say, traditionally the discounts have been very deep, so it works out well. CSP is definitely really focused around the Microsoft Cloud products. So, I guess these days most of Microsoft is cloud. I mean, we're going to have our traditional server, Windows Server, and SQL Server, and maybe Exchange servers if we want to keep those things on premise, and SharePoint and all the way down. But most people, if they want to buy a cloud product, Office 365, Azure, Dynamics, they can all do it through CSP. There's really not much anymore that's not available through CSP, and it's only getting bigger. We just got a new, what we call, price list recently in November, and it's got, more or less everything I've ever seen. And what's really unique about it is, like, some of the SKUs are so broken out that we can be granular with our clients and give them exactly what they need and not try to, bundle too much together where they're not going to use it. There is, Dynamics, whether it be what's called CRM Online, and now it's going to be called Dynamics 365. Those SKUs are available. We can talk more about them, and there's a lot of them, so they get confusing. But, again, these are all available through CSP. I was looking, do you have any questions? Nope, questions are good. So let's talk about price comparisons and what that looks like. So as I mentioned before, the discounts around CSP, if you look at anybody in this world can go online and kind of look at the Microsoft cloud-based products, whether it's Azure, your A1s, your A2s, your A4s, or it's, Office 365, your E1s, your E5s, and you're going to see a lot more coming. But just kind of look at those retail prices and understand that you would probably see somewhere in the range of 20% a month off any licensing SKU that you guys took. Discounted consulting rates, that's one of the great things is, companies like the managed solutions and, affiliates like them go out there and they sign up to help you with your licensing, and we know that we're going to get, potentially monies on the back end from Microsoft for deployment. We also want to give you discounted rates on our consulting fees because, again, as we see the world change to more what I'll call blended IT, we're seeing much more in the way of, managed services and managed licensing, and then, again, adding the discounts to that is a great thing for the customer. Proof of concept dollars, that's actually something that's, like we talked about, coming from Microsoft now. And then partner incentive funding is another piece from Microsoft. So again, if you're partnering with an integrator, ask them, is there funding out there to help deploy whatever it is you're interested in? Just keep in mind, if you're Microsoft, you're really pushing cloud. So if it's a cloud-based initiative, it's a good time to ask. For a lot of people going Office 365, we're able to go into a lot of companies and really provide them almost no cost to move. There's so much great automation and scripting out there these days that, we're able to go in as long as we're managing these CSP accounts and be able to help with customers do their migration and stand up of the cloud products, and there's really no cost to it. And, of course, we do a ton of what we call investing in our customers, and I think that's important to really help you guys understand the products that are out there. We have a phenomenal gal on our staff who goes out to customers all over the U.S. and presents what's called customer immersion experiences for Microsoft, where she runs you through a day in the life of what it would be like to use any and everything Microsoft, including some of those scary tools like Yammer that scare people off because they think it's Facebook-esque, but really powerful tools for collaboration, and she's amazing at doing it. So the last one I would talk about again is in CSP. These are the first times ever where we're seeing automation portals where you, the customer, control licensing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So there should be no confusion here. If you were in a CSP agreement and you said I have 77 users and you wanted 32 of them to have Skype for Business, 15 to have CRM, and you wanted to change every single month, you could do it. That's how flexible the model is. So I think people think, well, if I buy 37 E3, or if I have 55 employees and I have to buy 55 E3s. The answer is absolutely not. So what do I not need in my agreements, or do and don't need? So let me go through some of the stuff that's probably common, I guess, nomenclature in the Microsoft world in terms of licensing. So we've been used to things like the Core CAL, which used to include or includes today our Windows operating system license, our Windows Server, whether that be standard or enterprise, or even our System Center license for Config Manager, or now these days we're calling it 1606. So, as you guys deploy Windows 10, think about leveraging that tool. It's obviously pretty amazing for those who do have it. But the point is, these things are still applicable in the world of enterprise agreement. You've seen over the last year a push for what's called the enterprise computer cloud SKU, and they're kind of changing the name around on us as we go. But that includes things like E3 from Office 365, Enterprise Mobility Suite, or now Enterprise Management Suite, and your Windows operating system. Again, for some companies, this may make sense both financially and you may want to commit to those kind of things in an EA. And for others, they may say, I might not use half of the things that are in some of those SKUs. So how do I get bits and pieces of that? And that's where some of these MPSA and CSP agreements come in handy. Microsoft Cloud Licensing, again, it's all out there, and you can buy it through CSP. You can also buy it through MPSA or EA, and you guys are probably hearing a lot about the bridge CALs. And don't get confused about bridge CALs if you are. They're just like they sound. It's kind of the bridge to allow me to now leverage cloud-based products. But again, we've seen customers where they say, I'm going to buy a few items in my enterprise agreement, whether that's Windows Server or SQL Server, or maybe my Visio Studio or Dynamics CRM, and then the rest they buy through CSP or MPSA. So mixing and matching is not a bad thing. And how do you manage it? All through one central portal on the back end of Microsoft, and of course some of these automation portals where you can go and buy licensing as you need it. Can you still get Premier Deployment Services? Absolutely yes. Do you need them? That's really up to you where you're going to leverage them and where you're not. But you can pull and put those things in your agreements as you go. And then, of course, software assurance, I think it's funny because we've been using that term for years, but yet as you leverage a cloud-based product, let's say it's Exchange Online or OneDrive, of course, if Microsoft comes out and pushes a new OneDrive version or model, you're going to have access to it as well. We just saw a large law firm of ours in all over the United States just get unlimited storage inside of their emails. So, things like that, as they come out, you're going to get entitled to them. So I guess that's kind of the new world of software assurance, maybe redefined a little bit. Okay, really small slide. This one we'll send the deck to everybody who's on the phone, but this gives a really good comparison of all of the Microsoft licensing agreements that are going on right now, from the traditional enterprise agreements to what's called MPSA, as we've talked about, all the way through Select Plus, okay, and what even is considered what's called their SPLA agreement, and then over to the right, CSPs. So you'll kind of see where certain size customers make sense in certain worlds. I will tell you, Microsoft, their focus in some of their larger customers is still to sell you the 3-year enterprise commitment, and if that makes sense for you, by all means you should. But MPSA, CSP, those scale across all segments and sizes of Microsoft. So I think the big thing that what we're trying to get across here is that in the world of MPSA, and specifically more so CSP, it's that new world of let me buy what I want to buy when I want it. I don't want to over or under commit. I'll deploy on my, in when I need to do it. One of the things that comes up in the world of EA, which I don't think is a bad thing, but when you make your commitment, say it's November of this year for your new EA, you may not be planning on deploying, whether it be CRM or Office 365 until February of next year, but you're going to pay for it. So we've seen a lot of customers where even if at times the cost comparisons are equal or a little tilted to one side, it still makes more sense financially, and this is where that CFO relationship comes in, by the way, guys. It still makes more sense financially to go with the CSP or MPSA agreement because you don't commit until you really start using it, which is a nice thing. So anyway, that slide, if you guys want to go through it a little bit more, we can. I didn't see any questions on it. But, it's just that's where things are headed is, kind of to the right there where you're seeing MPSA and CSP. So I guess the next and more important thing that we get to is as we're enabled as CIOs and IT directors and even other providers like a managed solution, where we now can go in our clients' benefit or behalf and help them buy licensing. What we've done is we've seen a lot of great portals out there, and there's a few coming into market that are built for automation of buying your Microsoft product. We use a tool today that's called Snap. That's kind of the channel's choice in our world for Tier 1 CSP, where they can go out and actually buy licensing. And as we move forward, that portal is going to be available for white label for other partners who are similar to like managed solution. Managed cloud licensing is going to start coming through the MSP space of this world, so the managed service or outsource IT companies, where hopefully they can provide value add above and beyond just selling the product. I tell my employees all the time, and first to say this, I never in a million years thought I would ever want to sell a product. And the funny thing about it is that as long as I can assist my customer with services, which is frankly where we make our money and we enjoy our time, that's where it got interesting, where yes, I'll help you on your licensing, yes, I'll help automate it, but at the same time, my world is in the services space, and I want to continue to be there, but this just happened to be afforded to us, this opportunity. So automated portals, brokering for the future, I mean, again, CTO, CFO, they're going to ask, tell me who's spending what, where, how did you allocate budgets, and you're going to have to answer. So these automation portals are uber important. Next slide. There she goes. Anyway, so how do you do these pay-as-you-go options? So, we use tools, and they've been very effective for us. We have offerings out there that talk, and this is, by the way, my plug, so I apologize, that go into products like what we call our Instant Office, which provides you the full software licensing from Microsoft Office 365, including the hardware to run it, which is all based in Microsoft Azure, and also 24/7 support from a U.S.-based help desk, which is actually headquartered here in San Diego. So if you call, you're getting the people, I guess, or getting the sun. So anyway, don't take that as if they're not burnt, they're good. And then, of course, we've also built in tools to help us. As we go to the CSP world and the MPSA world, people are starting to build in products like Microsoft Azure. And so you can today in CSP buy an Azure SKU. We talked about that, pay as you go for it monthly, and David earlier had asked a great question. But with that, we want to manage cloud costs. And so we're using tools such as Azure Gator to be able to do that today, to be able to manage allocation of budget by department, allocation by user, allocation across different types of VMs, and give optimization or suggestions back to the CIO or CFO to make sure they're making good, informed cost decisions, as well as obviously server sizing and platform decisions. So it's a very powerful tool. And then, of course, Snap we talked about earlier for the Microsoft licensing and management of costs and really reporting features. So things to think about. Seat counts, what do they look like? The bigger you are, I think the more you're going to hear about the traditional enterprise agreement. We have customers that are 100,000 seat plus who are merging and doing acquisitions together. And some of those customers have said to us, well, we don't know where we're going to end up once we do our acquisition because we may end up not needing the headcount we have now, so those flexible models make more sense. But then others tell us, we love the commitment level where we kind of know what we've got a CapEx budget for it, for whatever the reason, whether it's taxes or other things, some people say these EAs make sense, and they do. Device versus user CALs inside of these agreements. So a lot of companies come to us these days and say, so I have, I'll give you, a one that's allowed us to talk about them, Stone Brewing Company for anybody who knows the beer. So this company has many, many, many hundreds of people who work inside of their factories and their distribution centers, including their corporate employees. But at the same time, device-wise, they don't have as many. So you're allowed to go out there, and I don't know if you guys are doing this today, but license things by the device, even though you may have more users. So when you look into agreements, whatever they may be, make sure your licensing benefits you as the consumer. EA governance over cloud licensing. EA definitely is a commitment level, so you want to look into the EA, understand what it is you're getting. For those of you who've had it, you understand it now, and just make sure that you don't feel over or under committed and you're getting the use out of the EA that you need to. The monthly ease of use cancellation, we've talked a lot about that today through CSP, but does it make sense for you to be able to have that ability to just turn something off? So when you're done watching the movies, we would one night, we turn it off, we paid our $1.99 and nothing else. So like cutting the cable, if you will, at home, because my wife and I tried that a few months ago and we couldn't get HDTV and she was very sad, so we had to turn it back on. But you get the idea. Consulting services from a partner. So, that's the big thing for a lot of companies out there. There is very few great people in the world who are in the world of IT, I think, these days. It's hard to find people. I see it because I'm looking for them every day. I think you as the consumer sees it in your internal organization for IT. So having great partners who can actually help you with some of these architectures and workloads is going to be key in the future. So that's me. Sad picture. But anyway, so that was our company. We appreciate you guys jumping in today. That was perfect, 41 minutes, so we didn't spend that much time. I don't see any more questions, but if you do have questions, we have a full, amazing sales team, or we call them our sales and marketing team, that can help you guys through these cost analysis, that can help you understand where you sit in your EA or other type agreement. And of course, we'd love to help you guys out with services. That's what we're here to do. So anytime, managesolution.com, no S at the solution at the end. Give us a call, and of course, keep in touch. We're going to be doing a bunch of these webinars, so if there's more questions, we should be able to answer them in the future. Thanks so much, guys.